Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mevo Dolder, President of the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, and thank you all, especially our members, for joining us via Zoom for today's On the Record program with Ambassador Sandhu on U.S.-India relations. I'd like to extend a warm thanks to the Consul General here in Chicago, Amit Kumar, and his staff for all the assistance in making this program possible. Before we dive into what I will expect to be a really interesting conversation, please note that the Council is a nonprofit, independent organization and platform, that the views expressed by individuals we host here are their own and do not, of course, represent the institutional positions or views of the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. And you can join our conversation by submitting your questions. Go to ccga.live on your browser and submit the questions there, and we'll get to them very soon. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today. Ambassador Taranjit Singh Sandhu is the ambassador of the Republic of India to the United States. He is one of India's most experienced diplomats when it comes to U.S. affairs, having served at the embassy in Washington before, both as Deputy Chief of Mission and as First Secretary Political in years past. He also served in the Permanent Mission of India at the United Nations in New York. And prior to coming to his current assignment in Washington, D.C., Ambassador Sandhu was the High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka. Ambassador Sandhu, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Really wonderful to have you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador.
Terrific. Let me start off with a broad question about India and the United States and their relationships in the world. We're the two largest democracies. We maintain very close ties. We share many common values. Unfortunately, both countries have been affected by COVID-19 and the economic challenges that come from that. How do you see the country's relationship evolving in this very dynamic and very uncertain environment?
Firstly, let me begin by complimenting the Chicago Council for the invaluable work your think tank does in shaping our understanding of foreign policy and global issues. I also understand that the Council would be celebrating its centenary in 2022. It's indeed a great pleasure for me to be with all of you today. As you know, we are in the middle of an unprecedented global pandemic, which has cost the world almost 700,000 deaths and countless livelihoods. COVID-19 has fundamentally affected the way we live, work, travel, and interact. India's response to COVID-19 has been guided by a degree of caution while keeping the focus on our key strengths. Our national leadership took early steps in imposing a lockdown, which saved countless lives. The challenge of limiting the spread of the disease in a population of 1.3 billion required a coordinated national response. In consultation with the state governments, our federal government has adopted a whole range of country approach and involved people in our responses. Although our total caseload is high, our case fatality rates are low and recovery rates are high at 65%. Our continuous efforts have been at ramping up medical infrastructure and testing capacities, which have crossed 500,000 samples per day. We are self-sufficient in PPE production and are in fact exporting those to some of the countries, including our neighborhood. Over 1 million grassroots women health workers are actively involved in contact tracing at local levels. We appreciate the importance of partnerships in fighting this pandemic. Even in difficult times, we have reached out to our friends and our partners and assisted them in whatever way we could. When the need arose, we stepped up our supply of COVID-related medicines to more than 150 countries, including in our neighborhood, Africa, Latin America, Afghanistan, and also the United States. We are partnering with global efforts in vaccine development. We also have a homegrown vaccine program, one of which has entered human trials. In fact, there are 3 ongoing collaborations with the United States in vaccine development. One of these is between an Indian company called Bharat Biotech and the University of Wisconsin Medicine and a vaccine company, FluGen, to develop a vaccine called ChloroFlu. Cooperation in health and medical sciences will be an important aspect of our future partnership. Our inherent strengths in biologics, healthcare, new drug development will enable us to forge new global partnerships. The pandemic has raised questions about the future of globalization and the structural limitations of the world order. As the prospects of growth evaporate, we are staring at the possible of contraction in the global economy. In this context, global recovery will be the main challenge that governments will need to navigate. Notwithstanding the challenges, the pandemic is also an economic opportunity for us in terms of shifting supply chains. Conscious of the need to seize these for our economic recovery, our leadership has announced a $270 billion stimulus package amounting to roughly 10% of our GDP. We have disbursed cash assistance to the tune of $8 billion and provided food assistance to over 800 million people. As we move towards recovery, the India-US partnership will play a critical role. We look forward to working with our friends and partners in COVID and post-COVID world. As 2 vibrant democracies with shared values, the United States is the ideal and natural partner for India. India-US ties have expanded steadily over the last 2 decades through the visionary foresight of the political leadership in both our countries. Our partnership enjoys strong bipartisan support both in India and United States. The expanding cooperation is strongly rooted in our shared values of democracy, individual freedoms, and rule of law, and in excellent people-to-people contacts. We are global strategic partners. Our relationship is deeply rooted with strengthening cooperation in areas such as defense, energy, space, health and sciences, artificial intelligence, etc. Much like the American Midwest, India's strength is its human capital. The 4 million strong Indian American community in the United States, including 450,000 diaspora in the Midwest, have enriched our relationship. For most Indians, the first encounter with this part of the United States took place in 1893 when a young Indian by the name of Swami Vivekananda introduced India and Hinduism to an American audience at the World Parliament of Religions held in Chicago. Today, the Indian diaspora is an integral part of the American society. Indian Americans and Indians are contributing to the knowledge economy and the innovation ecosystem of the United States. Indian companies have invested $22 billion in the United States, including $1.8 billion in the Midwest, and created 17,000 jobs. They are contributing to local communities through their CSR activities. Especially during the pandemic, the diaspora has been at the forefront, whether as healthcare professionals, tech professionals, or local community leaders. The last few days from now, on 15th August, we will be celebrating 73 years since our independence from colonial rule. Our independence, much like your Independence Day, is a reminder of the sacrifices of our founding fathers who fought hard to give to the succeeding generations a democratic India where freedom, liberty, and rule of law would be the governing principles. In 7.5 decades since our independence, we have pursued economic modernization, lifted millions out of poverty, enhanced the quality of living of our citizens, given them access to education, livelihood, and opportunities. Today, India is more than 50% below the age of 25 years. It is a young and aspirational and hungry for opportunities. we have an ambitious agenda for our development and aspire to become a 5 trillion economy by 2024. The partnerships that we forge with our friends, including the United States, are important in realizing our national goals and building a new India. With those words, I look forward to conversation with you.
Well, thank you, Ambassador. I think those are a fulsome explanation on what's happening in India with regard to the COVID crisis. And I wish you, as the rest of the world, luck with dealing with this extraordinary challenge that I think is a global one we all face in one form or another, and we need to learn from each other on that. I also appreciate your very strong statement of the positive and important relationship the United States and India have as partners, as like-minded countries, and as the two largest democracies. One of the things that our countries share is we're deeply diverse countries, in part because we're both very large. We have large communities. In this country, as you know, we have long had debates about our diversity, and it has once again come to the fore in the last few months. In the aftermath of the George Floyd killing, we're having a healthy debate about our diversity. In India too, there is a debate between different religious communities that has been going on for a while. Can you talk a little bit about the relative balance between, on the one hand, the diversity of India as a society, and the other about how majorities in a country need to deal with minority cultures and challenges, and how India has been dealing with this over the past few years?
Thank you. Let me start with COVID, because COVID has shown to India and beyond that how Indians come together. And I will start with a statement by my Prime Minister, a public statement right at the start of COVID in March itself. And he says, COVID-19 does not see race, religion, color, caste, creed, language, or border before striking. Our response and conduct thereafter should attach primacy to unity and brotherhood. We are in this together. The future will be about togetherness and resilience. Why I read these is because they are so relevant. And I don't have to labor to explain anything specifically in each of these. In India, in fact, the Indian democracy to a large extent also got deeply influenced by United States, especially our constitution. One of the chairman of the Constitution Committee at that time, and also many of the other leaders at the time of our independence, actually had come down and studied in United States. And that greatly influenced their thinking. For example, the Bill of Rights is reflected in our fundamental rights. And our fundamental rights in the Constitution guarantee most of the freedoms and rights which you see in the United States, whether liberty to express, to religion, etc., etc. Now, as you said, that definitely there are challenges. In any democratic polity, there will be challenges. That's part of politics. That's part of so many other dimensions which come from the freedom and freedom of expression. And sometimes freedom of expression, in fact, most of the time also requires responsibility on the part of the one who's exercising the expression. So coming back to India, as again you mentioned, it's absolutely correct. It's a very diverse country. As in the statement it reflected, we have different diversities of region, of caste, of economies, etc., etc. You name, and that diversity can be utilized. In fact, I'm slightly digressing. I recall when I was in the United Nations and I looked after the peacekeeping and peacekeeping aspects. But I used to tell the UN peacekeeping Undersecretary General that if ever you need a police force which is sensitive to so many dimensions and you want to utilize them in any area, the Indian police will be one of the best, because by nature of their job, by the size of the country, they are interacting and they are handling so many complicated situations. So coming back to this, let me just, given I know you have lots of other issues to tackle, but let me straightway talk about, for example, the minorities. Let us see the number of minorities at the time of independence of India and today, because the figures and facts talk. At the time of independence, there were about 25 million Muslims. Today, there are 200 million Muslims. Same is the figure of other minorities. Sometimes, some of the countries in my region who make noise on this, one has to only look at their minority figures at independence, and today almost negligible. So I want to mention to you is that in a democratic polity and in a parliamentary system, there is no question, and any politician will answer that, and any political scientist will be able to comprehend that in a democratic polity, when there are 200 million Muslims, there is no question that politically they can ever be ignored. The strength lies in the numbers itself. So while not denying that we do have challenges, and those are part of the political system, but I can tell you, and with the example of the number of deaths that have taken place, the way we have tackled different areas, even in the case of Jammu and Kashmir, the way it has responded, the government has responded to the COVID there, the figures of COVID, it's perhaps performing third or fourth best out of all the states. So I can very confidently say that the Indian democracy is robust. There are certainly challenges, but we have to always remember that exceptions do not make the rule. Like in the case in United States, just because X and Y is happening does not mean that that is the rule. And before I leave, 2-3 tidbits of the Indian political election system I want to mention here, because I know you are also gearing in to go in for your elections. In 2019, in the elections, parliamentary elections held in India, the percentage of the voters who came out and voted was 70. 640 million people voted. There was a polling booth every 1.25 miles. There were a total of 1 million polling booths. In order to ensure that maximum numbers participate, we declare the polling day a holiday. And last and not the least, you may be aware that in India, in order to ensure that the representation, especially people who are historically limited and who have had certain limitations at the time of independence, 25% of the seats in the parliament are reserved for them. That is the kind of positive enabling which the Indian Constitution internally has. And once you are present there, you are able to reflect your interest and also see the broader picture.
I appreciate that, Ambassador. Those are all very important statements, including the one you started off with on how the government sees the crisis of COVID affecting every single Indian, no matter who they are and where they come from. That's an important statement. Also, we probably can learn a little bit about how to conduct elections from you. Be good to have a holiday here, and maybe maybe a polling station for every 640 voters wouldn't it be an improvement? So kudos to you on that. And one of the reasons democracies needs to work together is to learn from each other. And here's one way we could do that. Let me move to China and a bigger geopolitical issue. Clearly, you're in Washington. You engage with the administration and with others in the U.S. government, including on Capitol Hill. There's an increasing focus in the United States on competition with China as almost a defining element in our foreign policy. You yourself have had recent military clashes with China on the disputed border region in the Himalayas. And to some extent, our interests are aligned here between the United States and India. There may not be totally aligned, but I'd be very interested in your view about how the United States and India might be able to cooperate with regard to China. What are the goals that we should try to achieve with regard to the country, and how could we do it best together?
Thank you, Ambassador. This is again a pretty wide topic at present. So let me also try and deal with it, one, in general terms, and secondly, specifically to some of the clashes which have occurred, some of the violent incidents which have occurred recently. Firstly, I want to underline that United States and India, they have a much wider relationship and much beyond third countries. And as I mentioned to you that the shared values of democracy and our commitments to rule-based order grounded in international law and peaceful settlement of disputes, and also increasing convergence, as you have also indicated, to strategic vision, including in areas such as Indo-Pacific. So our relationship today is a global comprehensive strategic partnership, which we state. And in that we cooperate in a number of areas, including regional issues. So in that sense, our relationship with the United States is multifaceted and it stands on its own footing, to put it in perspective. And it is also correct that there are many complementarities increasingly in our partnership, and this relationship has been going up and up. As I mentioned to you that it's a bipartisan. In fact, I have been here coming since 1997. In that time, we saw the successful visit of President Clinton. In the second time around I was here, President Obama visited, and now recently, President Trump has gone. And one of the very important aspects to be kept in mind here is what I mentioned in my opening remarks, is people-to-people relationship. And I know sometimes it's just seen in symbolisms, but do keep in mind that whenever a United States president has gone to India, there has been a very warm reception by people. Even this time you saw thousands came out. Now, Ambassador, you know the current situation, you know what investments United States make, and you know where United States have sunk billions of dollars, not in India, but still you are getting at the people-to-people level a warm reception. Somewhere in the neighborhood, if you go, you know what the situation is. So, but coming back to your specific question on China, we have a long border in the Himalayas with China. For the last 30 to 35 years, there were certain rules, certain agreements which were in place, and there has not been any violent incident. There has often been efforts at times, and we are aware because of all the modern equipment and satellites which are available, that the Chinese in the recent times have actually made a much more presence in that area, including armaments, including other these things. So we found in May, they had transgressed the line of actual control. Actually, the line of actual control is broadly based on what the physical reality there is. We are committed to resolving the issue through peaceful means. We have been having a diplomatic dialogue as also commander to commander level of exchanges. But I would also like to mention to you here that while in the past there has been certain compartmentalization where the border takes its own border issues have been spoken on a separate platform, while economic penetration into India has continued. This time around, there has certainly, it has brought focus, and the aggression of Chinese has been much more. And this time, not only now, if you see it from this vantage point, there has been aggressive behavior in other parts of the region too. So this time around, we have made it very clear to them on two aspects, that while we want and we are committed totally to a peaceful resolution, there is no question, we have not shown any aggression on their side or we have any intentions, but one, territorial integrity of India on our side of line of control, we will definitely ensure. My government has given a clear message on that. And secondly, that peace and tranquility on the border are important for the overall relationship. And that connection is certainly important. As far as United States is concerned, as I have mentioned to you, Indo-Pacific, in other areas, as I mentioned in medicines, a lot of areas. But also, to an extent, there are consultations among similar countries on whole range of issues, including the COVID-19. There were regular consultations which were taking place amongst Quad and some other countries of the region. So it's not necessarily directed towards China. But as I mentioned to you, that certainly we are keen to disengage. We have totally committed to peacefully resolving the situation. But at the same time, peace and tranquility of the border is very important. And the Chinese have to show their commitment, because this situation would not have come to this pass had Chinese not taken aggressive action.
Well, I thank you for really a clear statement on the border issues and its impact on the wider relationship, given recent events. But let me press you a little bit on the coordination between India and the United States with regard to China policy more broadly. Do you see the relationship with China in the same way that the United States is starting to see it, which is a very competitive, almost zero-sum way between the United States and China? And is India, one, does India look at the relationship it has with China in that way? And secondly, do you look to the United States as a partner in trying to develop a common strategy towards China on the range of issues that are out there? Or are you saying we will cooperate where we can, but where we differ, we might go in a different way? How do you look at the issue of China in the relationship between the two countries, between our two countries?
I think, Ambassador, you are yourself a practitioner of diplomacy, and you know the reality even as much as I do. I think, again, the relationship between United States and India is much wider. There's no doubt about that. That partnership is much bigger. As I pointed out, that even in the areas of science, I mean, look at it. You have so many Indian Americans who have done their basic education in India. But today, most of them, 3/4 of them are in the STEM areas. Same with almost 200,000 Indian students. They are also in the STEM areas. They bring value to the United States. They play a role in ensuring the competitive edge in IT, in medicine, in many of the other areas. So therefore, I don't want to bog our relationship down just with the China. But at the same time, I must mention to you that there is increasing understanding on many of the strategic issues. And in that, certainly with United States and with many other partners. But your question, is our relationship dependent on China? No, they are not. They are much, much wider. And certainly, look, the aggressive behavior of China in the region is to be seen by all. It's not just a concern of United States and India as democracies, but many other people. They have also been impacted. I think you are aware of the loan system. Somewhere where I was posted earlier, I don't want to go into those specific areas, but certainly you have to just take a look, and it concerns much beyond simply a bilateral relationship. So wherever there is exchange of ideas, exchange of these things, views, plus also wherever there is partnership to where we can together develop. But even in the case of COVID, for example, I give you that this partnership is very important, and it will get further deepened, because during this COVID crisis, we found ourselves in similar situation, because over-dependence on any geography for your supply chain can be very problematic. So that's another. Then during this period, we ensured that we were reliable partners to each other. For example, whatever medicines were required by United States and where India was part of the supply chain, we ensured that those supplies were given. And that serves as a basis for a future partnership. So therefore, not limiting it to China, I would say the India-United States partnership is much more robust, and it has a whole lot of scope to deepen further.
Thanks. I appreciate putting it in that context. That is very helpful. Let me, before I go over to questions from the audience, just one more question on trade. President Trump and Prime Minister Modi have a very good and close relationship. They had important visits to each other's countries. And as you said, when President Trump was in India, widely welcomed, as indeed was Prime Minister Modi when he came to the United States. And yet these are leaders who have a strong sense of self, a strong national sense about the importance of putting their nations first. And at times that may make negotiations of mutually beneficial deals more difficult. So on trade in particular, how do you see the evolution of the discussion on trade between our two countries and the two leaders who have brought both of this issue so much to the fore?
Ambassador, I will underline again that our relationship with the United States has been bipartisan. And in the last 2 decades, 4 American presidents have visited India. And in fact, during Prime Minister Modi's term, you are also aware that he had a very good relationship with President Obama, who visited in 2016 as the chief guest at our Republic Day celebrations. That was a very successful visit. And President Trump's visit was also very successful in February this year. As I mentioned, that there is certainly widespread popular support for this relationship. And a critical part is played by the young in India, who, as I mentioned to you in percentage, are a majority. And the young sees the United States in positive and aspirational terms. I think that is going to be the real strength of our relationship as we go forward. Now, as far as the trade is concerned, during the February 2020 visit, both our leaders had agreed to go in for a smaller trade deal in the beginning, and then pave the way for a comprehensive trade agreement. Now, of course, COVID came and it has certain limitations, but our respective teams have been engaged now in the last few weeks. Limited trade package would significantly open up Indian market to US agriculture industry. And the area you are based in also had an interest in that. In fact, many of the aspects, some of like dairy products, etc., pecan nuts, they are all part of which are some long-standing issues which are expected to get resolved, including some in the chemical industry, some in medical devices. These are issues which are under discussion at the moment. The overall trade, as you know, is about 150 billion US dollars in 2019. And there are more than 2,000 American companies that have invested in Indian economy. Similarly, there are Indian companies who have invested in the US, and even in the area where you are, there are Indian companies present. So with this commitment, we are hopeful that also that India is undertaking comprehensive economic reforms at this time, realizing very well that economy will be a very critical factor in the post-COVID world. So therefore, not just that two sides earlier would have benefited, but given the new circumstances, it's even more imperative that United States and India include this trade package and go in for further deeper agreements. So I am hopeful that before the year is out, our trade ministers are in touch, that we should be able to complete the smaller deal.
Thanks. That's would be good news if we can get there, and that would be terrific. And a related question that I just got relates to supply chains, not directly relevant, but it follows nicely on it. And the question is, what supply chains could India replace from China, and in doing so assist the United States in reducing its dependence on China, whether it's in the medical field or which of course has come to the fore, but more generally, are you looking at onshoring the relationship, economic relationship that will reduce American dependence on the Chinese and enhance the trading relationship with China, with the United States? Sorry.
Again, I will, Ambassador, delink it from China. The reason I'm saying that is because there are huge opportunities within India. You know, it's a market which is unsaturated, and there are cost advantages. There are many other factors because of which my belief is that United States and India economic relationship is bound to deepen. And now with COVID-19, of course, at the end of the day, it is the decision of the companies and the industry to decide where they want to invest and where they want to make their presence felt. But 2 or 3 reasons, including what I mentioned to you, that we have been reliable partners during this crisis, and that gives confidence to the industry that given the circumstances and given the similarity of our systems, that where democratic polity and decision makings make a difference, because there is a certain predictability there. So I do feel that there is going to be movement, and certainly a part of this has to do also with us, that we have to, as they say, lay out the red carpet. And my Prime Minister, even in times of COVID, understood this, took the leadership, called all the ministers, and in India, already some of the structural reforms which were held up due to different reasons have been pushed through, and they are in the process. For example, the defense industry has been opened up to 74%. Space, atomic energy, and a number of taxation issues are getting resolved so that it becomes a much easier this thing. Then in agriculture, a very important landmark decision has been to create one market in India. You can imagine the huge impact of that. How much of a big market it will become. And United States has an interest in agriculture products. There are companies who are wanting to enter that. So this will be another advantage which will come in. I mentioned to you the big decision of those investments. That money which has been kept is to be invested in all these sectors, including agriculture. And apart from that, we also have certain focus areas where again United States has interest. For example, like food processing, one, again, renewable energy. There's a lot that can be done and is being done. Then of course, in electronics, there are again opportunities available where United States can play a very important role. And there are some of US industry which is keen. Then of course, you touched pharma. Pharma is one area which both ways. And it's going to be both ways cooperation, working together. That is another area, of course, in medical devices, in diagnostics and things like that. Then, of course, there is oil and gas, energy. We were, Ambassador, about 4 years ago, $0. Today, it has reached 9 billion. And that is just on the way. There's a lot that will further happen. And as I told you, clean energy, renewable energy, those are also areas which are going to expand in big way. So these would be broad ones. Of course, retail sector is also there. And last and not the least, we are also undertaking a major investment in what we call small and medium industry. Now, that is where our strong belief is innovation comes. And since there are so many young in India, they will be important sources who will get into this. And that's why my government has undertaken a special program to boost this. And mind you, this will also be an important bridge between the United States and India, because many of the students who are studying here actually go back and they are trained in the US way of doing things. When they go to India, they set up small units, small innovative units, and those connect up with the US. And that's why I say that's another important bridge.
Ambassador Sandhu, I think that's all the time we have, and I think it's a perfect ending for this conversation that we had to talk about the bridge between our two countries, drawn by people. You emphasize the importance of people-to-people relationships. It is the people in our countries, not only because we are democracies, but also because we are democracies, who will drive relationships with countries across the border, and in this case, between India and the United States. An important relationship that will continue to grow and continue to expand. It will be challenged, no doubt, as all relationships are. And I think both of our countries deal with unique problems and unique issues, but we also try to do it in unique ways. I really appreciate the time that you were able to devote with us today, Ambassador Sandhu. As soon as travel is again permitted and enabled, we'd love to host you in Chicago in person. But until then, thank you for joining us on Zoom, and thank you for everyone online to joining us in the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And Chicago is a very important place, and I wanted to come. In fact, I was scheduled to come in March, and then these developments, and I look forward, as you said, whenever the situation improves. And I also look forward to more such occasions. I know because of the time limitation, we have not been able to cover many of the areas, but it will be a pleasure. Anytime, please give me a shout and I'll be very happy to come and speak to your membership.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Good day.
Good day. Same to you.